Talk about managing expectations in terms of culture. Keep in mind that the money is in your pocket, you're the buyer. The suppliers are probably more worried about what food do you like and how to make sure that you find that they get the right hotel for you. So don't stress too much about the China culture. Sure, it's great to understand Chinese history and to speak the language a little bit, but it's not a prerequisite for success. I'll embarrass myself and give a few examples of cultural mistakes that I've made. So a real quick story. I studied Chinese in China for many years, and I wanted to make a good impression on this new supplier that we were dealing with. But I had a cold. I had a sore throat, and it was really hard to speak up at the negotiation table. So I said, hey, on the way to dinner, let's drive by the drugstore and the pharmacy, and I'll buy some medicine. And of course, they wanted to take me in and help me buy things. I said, no, I can handle this, no problem. I've been studying Chinese for a little while. So I went in and I said in perfect Mandarin, I wanted to say in perfect Mandarin, I have a sore throat, can I have some medicine? What I said with a perfect accent was, I've been having sex with cats and I'm a little sore, what can you do for me? And so the supplier is kind of, well, that's not their product, but it's a different industry. And then they realized that I've messed up the pronunciation and flipped a few words around, and then everybody had a giggle. End of the day, still did business together, so I can say that in front of my supplier, and they're very forgiving. So don't worry if you fumble with the chopsticks a little bit or mess up the words. The money is in your pocket, you're the buyer. All right, now how do we establish a business relationship built on trust? And you hear the term guanxi over and over again. Old school guanxi meant that you had some kind of special relationship with the government where you had a backdoor way to get things done in China. That type of guanxi you don't need anymore. You don't have to pay under the table to get things done. And it's actually dangerous if you use that kind of guanxi, because if the person you paid ends up tricking you, you can't go to the lawyers, you can't go to the government and say, hey, I gave this guy some money under the table, help me get it back. So just avoid those underhanded deals. If someone says to you, I've got a cousin that works at the Customs Bureau, and if you give me $5,000, I'll make sure that you get a higher VAT rebate when it's exported. 15 years ago, that stuff happened. Nowadays, as a buyer, you just want to run away from it. So when I talk about establishing guanxi in relationship, I'm talking about the good kind, more like goodwill, just being friends but professional with a supplier. So my first step is be more than a purchase order number. A lot of buyers focus on closing the deal at the trade show, and then the only time they talk to the supplier is when there's a problem. I like to build up a goodwill piggy bank, meaning my children might be pen pals with the factory's children. I live near Niagara Falls when I'm in America, and I often invite my suppliers, hey, have you been to the U.S.? Come up to Niagara Falls. I'd love to show you around my family farm, and let me be a host for a couple days. Very rarely do they take me up on the offer, but they appreciate it so much that I invited them into my home that I was going to spend a day taking them to Niagara Falls and help with their invitation letter. So that shows that I'm more than just Mike, the purchase number ABC236. I'm Mike, their friend. Maybe I'm not their biggest customer, but I'm the nicest guy, and I try to help them out when I can. So be more than a purchase order number. Doesn't mean you have to buy extravagant gifts. It doesn't mean you have to do things under the table. It's just treat them the way that you would like to be treated. Even more important is to align the visions, meaning if you can articulate something that's exciting for the supplier, that you're growing a certain market, or you have unique technology that you're willing to transfer to them, that you know the latest designs, that you're going to certain markets overseas that they wouldn't be able to access on their own. Show them why they should be your partner, and generally they'll stick with it. The carrot and stick works, meaning you dangle something. All right, Mr. Supplier, you do this. You give me 10,000 units at X price, and the carrot is I'll let you get a taste of the market, and we'll grow together, and you'll make lots of money. That is a good incentive, but if you overpromise and underdeliver, things can get out of hand really quick, because the suppliers in China focus more on the relationship and what you say as much as we focus on the contract back home. So if you're even over a casual dinner and a couple drinks talking about how it's your hope that you can sell 1 million units in this market within 1 year, manage those expectations, and if it is realistic, then the relationship is sustainable, but you have to deliver as well. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about communications. Whether you speak Chinese, or you speak engineering, or you don't, sometimes the buyer and the seller are using a third language. The Spanish-speaking buyer and the Chinese seller are using English to communicate. Regardless of how efficient you are at communication, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that is taking place. So in this example, we have someone is asking directions from the police officer. In the police officer's mind, it's so clear: go to the left, take a right, and you're there. But something even as simple as that doesn't convey all the time, and so in the mind of the lost pedestrian, he doesn't know where to go. The same thing happens in manufacturing. You thought you were so clear that to make this watch, it should be able to extend at 2 millimeters, and I should be able to drop it into 30 meters of water without a leak. You thought you were so clear. You really need to go out of your way to confirm not only does the seller understand your specifications, but it's written down so that any of their employees who are on the assembly line can also understand those specifications. And it's not always easy. I'll give you some tips. Let's look at general communication. If you ever come into my office, you will see that on every computer terminal is a bilingual instruction for how to write an email. And it's things that you and I would take for granted, like, is the correct attachment there? Did you do a spell check? Are you sending it to the right people? There are a lot of mics in this world. You would not believe how many emails I get from suppliers sending to the wrong mic. So the point is, when you're on one side of the world and the supplier's on the other, you only have one chance per day to communicate. And if you ask, is the order ready to ship? And then the supplier responds, which order you're talking about? The umbrellas. Which color umbrellas? The red umbrellas. It takes like 5 days to get an answer to a simple question. So yeah, it's getting better with Skype and QQ, but efficient email communication is the key to keeping projects going along quickly. So I put this in bilingual so that when you get the slides, feel free to cut and paste, use it as you wish. So that's communicating with email. What about managing the project? I've gone into factories that have 10,000 employees, and I ask, hey, show me your CRM software, your customer relationship management, or your project management software. What? This software exists? Do you have an Excel sheet? No. Well, who manages the relationship with the customer? Well, the sales team gets the order. Well, what about updates and dealing with problems? So even massive factories don't have a formal system for keeping customers updated. So sometimes I have to sit down, get the Excel spreadsheet out, and first ask, all right, can I have an account manager, someone at the factory that will be my main point of contact? I don't care if it's an engineer, the salesperson. Ideally, the higher up the better, but that's not always possible depending on how large your orders are. But at least find somebody who has ideally been there for a little while, is likely to be around, and then structure some type of updates. Let's agree to meet at 9 p.m. USA time every Wednesday, and maybe our call is just, hey, how's everything going, Mr. Lee? Maybe we need to talk for an hour about problems, but let's get in the habit of at least arranging or planning to meet at a certain time. And this is not brain surgery, but what should we be controlling? Well, obviously the task, the status, who's responsible, what are the latest comments. So I sit down and I make a spreadsheet, and then I say, send this spreadsheet in advance of our conference call once a week. So there are ways you would hope the supplier that they would do this, and if you're buying from a European or American supplier, they probably would provide this. But in China, as buyers, we need to do a little bit more of the heavy lifting.